I'd rather replace a drone than have to replace a trooper or an agent.
We're thrilled to have DJ Smith join us, a true pioneer in the world of counter-drone technology and public safety, whose current position as the Unmanned Aerial CUAS Systems Program Coordinator as a member of the FAA's CUAS Aviation Rulemaking Committee.
When we start talking about counter-UAS, the SLTT community becomes that force multiplier for the airspace awareness.
How do you balance the need for comprehensive coverage with the practical constraints of budget and technology?
Well, when you start talking about autonomous flight and AI, in some cases, no C2 to jam and defeat, because the drone's either flying by photo-optical camera, where it's just looking at the topographic map it's installed in it and says, fly this route to this location, or if it's flying by GPS or 5G, there's still a jamming, I think, a solution there that can be effective, but then you're jamming all the other 5G stuff that's in the area. So there are concerns. The implementation of the technology around it, there is a cost prohibitive measure there where some of it right now, when you start talking about a Robin radar and some of these other really good effective systems, they're a couple $100,000 to $500,000. So they are prohibitive for SLTT to buy. We just don't have budgets like that. So, kind of a wink, wink, nod, nod. That's where our congressional folks come in to help us, maybe help fund these projects and then take the data and create the common operating picture. So, as far as the implementation, we start talking about kinetic solutions, which is physically removing the drone, because if you can't jam and defeat it and you can't soft cyber take over it, your next solution is I've got to physically remove that from the airspace. So there's a couple things that play into what the airspace looks like. Remote ID was a great volley across the bow. I think it was a great first step. I think Remote ID 2.0 can be a whole lot better than what we have. I always joke when I give my presentations that, I always ask in the room, I'm like, hey, who here really liked that Remote ID national campaign that we just had? It's just, who here, anybody want to point out something in the campaign that was really good to them? And nobody raises their hand, or unfortunately, sometimes you'll get one person that goes, I'm like, yeah, there wasn't one. It is a great first start. It narrows the haystack, but there's no means of compliance. And every drone's not going to be able to do that. Although manufacturer was supposed to be compliant, I think of August of 23, August of 2022. They were all supposed to, all done, was supposed to be after that. It was supposed to be compliant. Again, we go back to what I talked about, your Amazon, and I love Amazon. Don't get me wrong. I'm a 5 to 10 box guy a week with Amazon. So I'm not bashing them at all.
Fun statistic there. Yeah. Exactly. But again, you're not speaking poorly of it. It's just a whole other gambit of this whole of technology and the style of this hardware that we don't even have details on necessarily.
Well, and then what's your means of checking it? There's a couple apps that are out there that are kind of clunky. So how do I look at the Remote ID? One really fun fact I'll give you on this case in Rockingham County, the investigator Mike Shank with Rockingham did a fantastic job of prosecuting this. We did the detection side for him, and I did the forensic of the drone. But the prosecutor had a phenomenal job. She just was an amazing person to go after this case. The owner of that property, weirdly enough, with Remote ID, it's a near wave Wi-Fi signal. They actually captured her partner, as she referred to him, tried to connect to the drone. Well, when he was connecting, it actually captured Remote ID because the SSID was transmitting as the Remote ID off that drone. So he was able to see it through a Wi-Fi signal on his phone and capture the Remote ID long before the D-drone trailer was deployed. So I bring that up because it gave us one more point in the past. The trailer grabbed the drone, it matched what the person had. And then when I did the forensic on the drone, it was identical in the tombstone file to all three of those points. So it basically sealed that case shut, that was the drone being used to harass this lady and her children. So neat point there. So, the implementation is going to be tough, but we've got to start. Right? Everything has a starting point, and I like to call it what my day one will be. And we need to have a day one, and I'll really step on my soapbox on this one because I've been hounding this one for the last couple of years. So my day one looks like this. I think you have a strong national robust education campaign for the hobbyist and everybody, and says we're going to do 18 months of educating the public on what drones are and what they're not, but what safe and legal flight in the national airspace looks like. What do you have to do to comply to put a drone, take it off from the grass, put it in the air? And at the end of the 18 months, July of 2027, whatever the case is, as of today, the rules of the road are clear. if you're in violation of any of the rules of the road, you're either going to be mitigated, your drone's going to be seized, or you're going to face some kind of punitive damage for violating the law. We have to do that to get to that point, because at least on that day one point, we can start building out advanced air mobility more effectively. We can move in a direction that makes sense for everybody. Is there going to be bumps along the way? No doubt. But if we don't start, we got to have a starting point, I guess is what I'm getting to.
Good point. I'm curious, as we dive in further on this, on what your day two looks like and how far along we are on day one at this moment, because it's a fascinating topic to continue to discuss. Now, when testing a lot of these counter drone technologies in, say, diverse environments, is it crucial for ensuring their effectiveness, or could you share some insights, some of the most challenging testing scenarios that you've been involved with, such as desert environments, and how have these tests been influential in technology development?
Absolutely. So a lot of the testing on these technologies have happened in the desert initially. Deserts provide a very sterile environment, safe environment. So if you're knocking stuff out of the sky, or if you're shooting signals in the air, you're not going to interfere with anything because it's, the desert. Where it becomes problematic and more challenging is when you get in the urban environment, because urban environments create a lot of different things. Signal reflection, refraction, off glass, off structures, off metal. Signal absorption's a bigger issue. So one of the things we did in the test in July of 2022, and I say DHS the counter-UAS PMO office, Sean McDowell and the folks at DHS actually conducted this test. So one of the things they want to test for is how high does the drone need to be before it starts getting detected? How much density of urban environment will absorb that RF signature from the drone in the controller, where it masks it or creates a blind spot for you not to see it? How do urban environments that have sloping environments down hills and things like that affect your ability to effectively track it? What's the highest altitude you need to be at? Because like I said, a desert's great, but a desert is flat and straight. So signal propagation is not an issue. You don't have a sound floor issue. So you don't have RF spectrum issues. You have, prolific 5G or 4G and cell towers and RF spectrum related to things transmitting in a city. It muddies the waters and it gives you more things to cycle through to look at the data for that drone. And those are critical tests, and I'm glad DHS has been doing them. We did another one this past summer that bore more fruit as far as which technologies were effective and which ones were maybe less effective. And then more importantly, like I talked about that layered system, which ones are the most appropriate to layer on top of each other to get you to 60 to 70% efficacy. Because I think right now getting 90 to 100% is with the current state of technology, I don't think we'll get there. And that's just DJ speaking. I'm not speaking for the industry. I think we can definitely achieve a 70 to maybe close to 80% efficacy where we can see majority of the drones. But it goes back to the previous question, which was the legislative carve-out has to come to give us that ability to decode. When we can decode, now we can start to see everything above us, and it opens up that ceiling a little bit better where we can actually effectively deal with it. And then the ones that aren't squawking, the ones I can't see, dark drones have been an issue for the last couple of years in Ukraine and around the world. Dubai's dealing with them. We're dealing with them here in the US. And that dark drone is one that we can't classify or see RF spectrum wise, or maybe it's using a radio frequency path that's not normally known to drones, because most detection systems either will detect they'll detect a signal and they do a comparative and a cataloging system. So they'll know this frequency is consistent with a Futaba controller. So I'm seeing a Futaba controller over here, or I'm seeing a DJI controller. The drone is consistent with this frequency. And then you start throwing in things like, GPS spoofing and all those things. We've got to start this process of getting this technology implemented on the ground, because the longer in the saddle we have with it, the better we'll get with it. And that's why I keep pushing the detect, track, identify, because the better we can detect, track, identify, if you can't see it and track it, you can't mitigate it anyway. So if that's the less obtrusive, part of counter-UAS that you're willing to give us now, Congress, give us that now, and let's move towards some sort of mitigation moving forward. Those are just challenges we've got to overcome. But urban environments are one of those areas, like I said, and we deal with it. We do undercover operations. If I put a body wire in undercover and he goes into a building, I got to know if it's a block or steel building, I'm going to get refraction issues, or it's not going to come out of that, which is why we don't put repeaters in trunks of cars, because it's a big steel box. Signals don't get out and propagate properly. So same thing with the counter-UAS. I've got to know how that technology is going to operate. And if I have altitude issues, Tom Adams, who was with the FBI's counter-UAS team for years, talked about, site selection for placement of the equipment is even more critical. Do I have the right building to get the most granularity downward to see what's going on in this airspace? Or if I put it in this location here, am I getting blocked by other buildings or trees or whatever the case is? So again, more time in the saddle is going to make us more effective. And urban environments are one of those areas we need more time in the saddle to put that stuff in place.
Well said, DJ. Now, given the emphasis of low to mid-level detection capabilities, how do you balance the need for comprehensive coverage with the practical constraints of budget and technology? And are there any innovative approaches or solutions you find particularly promising?
We do. So a lot of the conversations around that focus around what they call cost per square mile. So how do I cover a square mile? What's it going to cost me? I think New York, the first time they went at it, I think it was a little over $1 million a square mile. I think North Carolina did a great project down there, but it was several 100,000 square mile. So we're working on a project right now in Hampton Roads with the military bases to proliferate sensors around Hampton Roads to create a common operating picture for them. So the benefit for the bases is it extends their fence line out so they can see something coming sooner, but it also gives us a larger full picture of that whole area. And I want to say, VIPC and the Public Safety Innovation Center is one spearheading that. Dave Erie with VIPC is Chris's boss, and he's got that 500-pound brain, man. He's one of those guys that just thinks in a million different directions, but he has those connections with our federal partners to do these large-scale projects. One of the big pieces for that project that was difficult was the cyber side. Meshing DoD networks and civilian networks are always a problematic issue because of cyber standards are different on both sides of the fence. But it's doable, and I will applaud the Air Force for stepping up and saying, we need to fix this problem so it doesn't happen, and then fix this at our bases. So when you start looking at sensor proliferation and placement, it's doable. We've just got to do it. I want to say we're looking at down there around maybe 30 to 50,000 a square mile. So if you can do it for something as minuscule as that by getting that low to mid-level airspace awareness. Now, once we get into the nuts and bolts with it, I think we're going to figure out, are we getting enough granularity altitude-wise and distance-wise out of these, and is there enough overlap? But it's going to give us a real good test bed to look at and see if this works anywhere else in the country. And maybe we start building out from there. Because again, that one light in the warehouse, you start building off of that, and then the picture gets bigger and bigger. I think, maybe the dense urban areas like deserts doesn't need this type of approach, but your cities do. New York, LA, all these bigger cities, I think when you can do that, but again, it goes back, there is a fiscal positivity or fiscal positive impact for our congressional folks. It creates a whole industry. So now you can do more deliveries in the cities because you can deconflict. I can do a defibrillator delivery to this warehouse at a Home Depot that somebody had a heart attack, get a defibrillator on the ground quickly. I can get your medicine to you in the middle of the night. Grandpa ran out of, his heart attack or his heart medicine. He needs those under the tongue pills like tonight. Boom, he's got them. And when I start looking at the world through that optic, the world looks a whole lot brighter and a whole lot more promising.
It is really exciting. There's so much that's going to happen in front of us. Now it's also like and it's so new that we're still figuring out every little level of it, and it's a fascinating story. Like, I was working with companies on how the drone delivery would happen at a house, and is it going to happen in the front yard? Would it happen in the backyard? Is there a designated location? But not every drone or every house is the same. They're not all cookie cutter where there's an open front yard and a closed backyard, or the backyard's closed and maybe there's trees here, not dog outside, kids there that could grab it. I mean, Zipline has a great concept. I love their concept when it comes down from the drone to deliver, but what does that look like? Does the package get wet from rain and from storm? Can it be locked in? Like, there's so much to it, and it's not a problem. It's more just, it's an exciting future that we have to create these solutions that are occurring. So I don't know, fascinating.
It is. The very first time I saw the map, and we were added to the MAPS advisory board, as strictly on paper. State Police was is part of that advisory board as far as when they first started. So 2017, I was taking my daughter to the University of Tennessee to drop her off for school. We stopped by there because I hadn't actually seen a demo yet of the delivery. It was a delivery to a yard. It was ice cream, and it lowers down, it drops it off. But it's sheerly, to me, I'm not a tech nerd, but I am a kind of a tech nerd. So just the little egg that holds the box on, I think they had like 70 different variations before they got that egg just right. So when the box touches, it disengages. And then when they start flying back, it reels up a little bit, stops. And then once it leans into the flight, has enough drag on the line, it starts to reel the whole thing up. And I was thinking, holy cow, there's so much into this. And now, the map is just like beyond this. They're starting to look, they're doing some counter-UAS testing. And Virginia Tech has just been an amazing thing for Virginia as far as be able, Tombo Jones, who runs that program, man, it's just amazing the stuff that they're doing. But deliveries, like you said, holy cow, man, it's endless of what you can do with it, really. I mean, there's a company in the Midwest called Saberwing, and I want to say their numbers are like 5,600 pounds. They could haul 1,600 miles. So now you've alleviated port issues and all the things we had in California with the port strikes and all. It just blows my mind, dude. Sorry.
Yeah. No, I'm right there with you, DJ. Like this is a very fascinating area, and also our conversation has roamed not in one area of drone and drone industry. We've literally spoken of so many different facets of it because there's so many different layers here, and there's so much going on, and so much room for growth and expansion. And what you're talking about is bringing just showing everyone this information, giving them the filter, and so on. Totally fascinating. Now, you had brought up ports, and I thought this is such a fascinating one. Could we dive back into that? I know ports represent a unique challenge for unmanned aerial systems due to their role as choke points in global shipping logistics. How are public safety agencies and port authorities working together to address these challenges, and what solutions have shown the most promise?
Well, we've done a couple tests here. The PSIC did as well here, a port security project where we looked at air, land, and sea. So we had UDVs underwater, or on top of the water, actually surveying the areas. One of the things I thought was interesting is after a hurricane, to open up a port, they have to go by and check every buoy to make sure that they're still in the same alignment. So when these ships come in, they know where the deep water is, they know where the shallow water is, so they navigate it properly. This project, we did UDVs on top of the water, autonomous vehicles, drones in the air, and we did one that we had a simplified GUI interface where we actually took robots on the ground as well, mock shooting, a chemical spill, and then like one of them was a beast whale. Out was a scenario. So
honestly, it's a real thing because those things explode. So
exactly. And then, how do we integrate all this technology into a simplified GUI so we can actually see all three of these, paradigms at the same time?
Nice.
And I thought that was a unique approach. So the Port of Virginia, we've done the second
shameless
one
plug, by the way. That is DroneSense. You can do all of it. ROV, quadruped, all of it in one. Even put a GoPro and a dog if you wanted to. But yeah, sorry, shameless plug there.
I love DroneSense, man. That company has been cutting edge since it started.
Yeah,
Ryan and those folks over there just do some amazing stuff.
I agree.
Yeah, but I tell you, it's ports are unique in a couple ways. So ports have security issues as well because obviously you don't want something coming in. And then you have ships that are offshore with foreign nationals. I think there was some concern about some countries of origin that has ships off in international waters, and were they bringing drones across? And so how do we search for that? And how do we see that in the port security so that we keep operations open? Because there's a direct fiscal impact, just like closing an interstate. You close a port, there's a direct financial impact to the U.S. and to that industry in the millions per hour, day, or whatever the case is. They can actually put a dollar figure on that. So how do we keep that open if we have an active shooter, or if we have an incident with a ship out there? How do we get drones overhead? It's like reconstruction with highways. We realized that doing reconstruction with drones, open highways, a whole lot faster than actually putting the total stations out there, doing the shooting, and actually mapping the whole thing out. So we can do that as well with that. But more importantly, we have sensitive ports like, Norfolk Naval Shipyard is part of that whole shipping industry area in the Norfolk area. It's also the largest shipyard, it's the largest naval base in the world. So how do we protect while keeping the port open as well? That's a balancing act because, it's a choke point, one way in, one way out, large battleships, all that crazy stuff. So we wanted to kind of look at how we address that issue from an air, land, and sea level and leverage autonomous vehicles, because they realized that we can send a UDV or out there on the water and actually survey those buoys underwater and see that the block is in the same spot it was before, and maybe do mapping as it's doing that. That alone saves a day or two or even a week of a port being closed, which again, fiscal impact. But it's also safer as well. So I think ports offer unique opportunities for drones as well, but also UDVs and unmanned vehicles on the ground to actually do routine patrol and surveys. DFR programs are huge for those, I think. I think when you can put a drone up and actually survey your port 2 or 3 times a day with a DFR drone and actually see where your shipping containers at, they become more efficient, and which actually helps everybody save money and helps the industry move along a lot faster.
Quick break to highlight whether you're flying, sharing, or managing your drone program, DroneSense has everything you need. It's hardware agnostic, so it works with a variety of drones, sensors, and other hardware, giving you ultimate flexibility. And with the ability to collaborate across agencies securely, DroneSense helps you scale from 1 drone to 100 plus, supporting you in everything from routine calls to disaster response. To learn more and get started, check out the link in the description. I agree. Before my first real movement into the drone industry was actually in oil and gas, and just getting out there, 2 assets in the middle of nowhere, North Dakota, and just getting a drone up just to have asset management was massive. And it's, I mean, even what you were just saying about ports and just sending an ROV down below and something out, we used to have to send a specialist and diver and all of those things. I mean, it's just, there's so much positive happening right now.
Oh man, it's just again. I guess I get excited. I tell people all the time when I start talking about counter-UAS and drones, I turn into a Sunday preacher on a hot July. I get so excited about it because, man, if you can almost dream it now, you can make it happen with uncrewed vehicles.
Truth. Love that. Now, counter-drone technologies have various applications in public safety, such as wildfire management, hostage situations, and correctional facilities, as we dove in earlier. Could you discuss a particular instance where counter-drone technology played a crucial role in one of these scenarios and the lessons learned from that experience?
There's probably not a lot of direct experiences with counter-drone being over those topics, but I will tell you with wildfire, we're looking at doing a project here. We're in the talks with a counter drone company to put a sensing device in our helicopters, because we learned that from our pilots, the most dangerous time for a drone, a manned aviation helicopter pilot taking off is taking off and landing. That's when drones are the most, I should probably say that wrong. The most dangerous time for a helicopter pilot is takeoff and landings when it relates to drones. So if they know what the airspace looks like around them, they can actually avoid not taking off or not landing. We came up with a deconfliction policy for our program for that very reason. Our helicopter pilots were very concerned about us being out flying a reconstruction or something, them coming into land, because as you know, a helicopter takes a tail rotor strike from a drone, that it's coming down violently. I lost 2 very good friends in Charlottesville when that gearbox gave out in the helicopter in Charlottesville during the riot. So we want to make sure that airspace security and awareness is the key. If they know a drone's there, then they can kind of peel off and either go to a higher altitude, wait till we do an all stop. Our policy is when a manned aviation's coming in at all to a scene, it's a full all stop. Everybody lands on the ground and nobody takes off again to either the rotor stop or it's cleared the airspace. So, and you got to have those type of things in place, but those are things that just policies and TTPs you put in place ahead of time, and everybody's aware of what's going on. But wildfires especially, I think it would be critical for them to be able to actually know when drones are overhead. We saw what happened in California wildfires. And to be honest with you, I think there needs to be a rethinking of what needs to be registered and what doesn't need to be registered, to be honest with you.
I agree. Was it $65,000 damage from the little Mavic 2 to that airplane, the tanker? Yeah. And that's the, under 259 or 59 gram device, and still did that much damage to a vital piece of tech.
Well, that was a thought process. It wouldn't possess enough Gmax rating to actually cause any significant damage to an aircraft, but you're right. That showed it does. Not to mention, how much fire could have been extinguished with that still in the air versus having to take it out of service. I mean, there's a direct impact. Or we're landing a helicopter on Interstate 95 and to pick up a patient, but they have to divert because there's a drone flying. Now that patient could be your loved one or somebody else's, doesn't get to that golden hour, dwindles away because they can't land and pick up the patient. And that all that goes back again, almost everything I'll ever talk about when it comes to counter is education. Our biggest hurdle with all of counter is education. Most drone pilots just don't know. That drone pilot in California probably had no clue, and I don't know because I didn't look at the report, that he shouldn't fly there.
I agree. And that it's just about education. And he could have been, maybe he was going to see if his house was burnt down, all sorts of little things. Right. And like, we have to educate everyone on here. We don't want to disencourage people to enjoying this incredible technology that we all love and we use now as tools, and so on. But it is just it is a lot of education.
Like a common operating picture, we need a common understanding. I think, common understanding of what's good and what's bad and what you can do and what you can't do with drones.
Yeah, true. Now, safety and training, just as we're saying education, are crucial for effective counter-drone operations. What are some of the best practices for ensuring that all involved parties are well prepared to respond to drone-related threats? And how can agencies continually improve their training operations?
So again, going back to the education piece, I think it's more critical. It's as critical for our sworn folks as well. How to deal with a drone pilot, what you can legally ask for and what you cannot ask for, what the drone pilot's required to possess, their license, their registration, present that to law enforcement upon request. Because what it does, any misstep of those type of steps could create liability for the agency. Hey, just give me your controller, I'll land it. Well, you can't do that. This is why you can't do that. Because, aircraft Piracy Act says you can't just yank it out. I can't just take a broom and knock your drone out of the sky. Now, I will tell you, if it poses a clear and imminent threat, we're going to do that regardless, if it poses a threat to somebody's health or welfare. So the other part of it, the education piece, we start talking about that. So what the drone pilot should and shouldn't do, but also what does a drone response look like? I use Capital One because my wife works for Capital One. Capital One finds a drone on their building. Could be another banking institution. We already know it's happened where in October of 2022, they sniffed out the Wi-Fi credentials of an employee at another banking institution in the Midwest. And then they broke into the network using those credentials. Luckily, their IT person intercepted it. Well, Capital One, and I gave a presentation to their executive staff about a month ago. And I said, look, treat every drone like evidence till it's not. And that's what I've told our folks. Every drone's evidence till it's not. Why? Because even though your first thought is, some kid was flying his drone, it just crashed on the roof. Well, what if it wasn't? What if it was somebody stalking their spouse because they're going through a divorce? There's a inherent safety issue there. What if it's somebody that was just trying to see if they could snip out Bluetooth or Wi-Fi over that building? Because the one in October 2022, they used a Phantom 4 with a sniffer on it, sniffed the credentials, and then came back with a 600 with a pin kit and a pineapple and actually broke into the network. So we got to be smarter, as these used to be toys, but they could not be toys as well. But that drone response is there something hanging off the drone when you get there? Treat it like a bomb, 300-foot barrier. And we produced a card for our sworn folks that has the left side of the card is how to interact with a pilot and then what laws they're violating. And what we did, I realized about a year and a half ago that aviation law, so the FAA classifies drones as aircraft, right? So let's use that to our advantage. In Virginia, we have a law that states you have to have aircraft has to be registered, pilot has to have a license. Doesn't say drone specifically, but if it's considered aircraft, we can use those codes in Virginia to charge somebody that violates that. Now, our goal is never to charge anybody, but to use that as kind of the principle to say, look, I'm going to educate you on why what you're doing right now is a violation of law. This is what you need to do to comply. And if there's a recurring issue with that same pilot or person, or maybe they're just not receptive, then you charge them and you have to, obviously make an example so that it doesn't happen again. There's laws on the books in Virginia, and we went down to Tyler Perry Studios with drone responders back in the fall and did a presentation. He actually invited drone responders down to do a presentation for Georgia Public Safety on this very topic. It took me 5 minutes to pull up their aviation code, almost identical what Virginia has. You can't have alcohol in flying aircraft, a manned aircraft. You can't do that with drones.
No bottle to throttle.
Exactly. So showing the parity there. So now our pilots know, look, Mr. and Mrs. such and such, sir, whatever, these are the codes of violation. You have to have your drone registered. And this is why it's, FAA requires it, but this is Virginia law that states you have to as well. But like I said, in the right side of the card is strictly, if you come up on a drone incident, do you see this? Yeah. Treat it like a crime scene until it's not. If there's something hanging from the drone, evacuate the area 300 feet, get a perimeter set up until we can determine it's render safe or whatever the case is, and then go into your forensic environment. I think when we start getting better about that, then we start to see drones as the total tool that it really is, which is it's a great tool for flying and having a great time and a hobbyist, but also could be used for other things.
Yes. Now, DJ, looking ahead, what exciting advancements or challenges do you see coming in the world of drones or counter-drone technology over the next few years? And then how do you think these will impact public safety and the way that we handle drone-related challenges?
Oh man, that bar's pretty high, man. There's a lot of stuff that can happen. You talk about autonomous flight, it's going to be a big one. I think DFR programs being able to fly longer, further. I think the technology is going to get better. I think battery technology will get better. I joke all the time, maybe we need to, make a call to Elon Musk to make us a battery we can fly for 2 hours with a drone. But
Constantly connected to Starlink and has a Neuralink directly into our head that has autonomy like Tesla. Yeah. Yeah.
Exactly. So I think autonomous flight is going to be the biggest change. I think being able to get those medical deliveries are going to be huge. There's another project out on the Eastern Shore where they're doing deliveries from the hospital on the Eastern Shore to Tangier Island, which is a 17-mile scope, because labs and testing materials like that, they have to be able to get labs to a hospital to get them tested. It could take hours versus, that 17-minute flight or 17-mile flight, drop it off, get the results back, similar to what UPS did down in Raleigh-Durham with the lab there, where they were flying lab things across the interstate. So pretty exciting there. I think mapping is going to get better. I think there's going to be so many positives for our world as a whole. How cool is it to have a drone, that will fly behind you when you're riding a mountain bike? Some of the coolest videos.
Was literally doing it this past weekend. Yes, it is. I never thought that would be the case, and it's happening, and it's so. Yeah. Anyway, go on.
And it's effortless, right?
Yeah.
So it's locks up, boom, and it's following you. So maybe, from our tactical standpoint, maybe our TAT teams don't have to have a pilot in the APC, the APC actually flying the drone. Maybe the drone just pops ahead of them. They give it hand signals, which is happening now with certain drones. Fly forward 5 feet. I will tell you that we have 7 full-time TAC teams with the state police here in Virginia. They use drones every call out. We've had several shot, but I'd rather replace a drone than have to replace a trooper or an agent. And that's where that kind of bridges the gap of safety for us. Meth labs. I think, when you, instead of, suiting up and going into a meth lab, or maybe there's a bag of powder. Yeah. It's crazy that technology, we need to leverage it more to actually bridge that safety gap for all of us. Put a drone in the attic versus this big pumpkin sticking my head up in an attic to see if the bad guy's up there.
Well, and you're hitting your nail on the head right there. It's that nobody considers drones for these, even though it's such an obvious answer for a lot of us that know the technology, and it's trying to share that with everyone right now as well.
Yes, sir. And it's been a game changer for us, and it's an absolute force multiplier. Drones for us have been a force multiplier for public safety across the country as well. When we start talking about counter-UAS and getting detect, track, identify, the SLTT community becomes that force multiplier for the airspace awareness. And I think when we start seeing the world in that optic, I think we become safer, but we can also start doing more with drones that we haven't done so far. First responder BB loss, we just got ours 2 years ago. So now I can actually fly this field instead of having to land, grab all my stuff up, walk to the next field through the tree line. I can put that drone over in that field, look for that lost elderly person to see if he's in that field. So your continuity of operation continues to move forward versus stymie and stopping and losing time.
Nice. Now, DJ, I got one last question for you. So thinking back on your impressive career, all the experiences that you've had, what is one piece of advice you would give to those that are just starting out in the field of counter-drone technology or in this industry in general? And what's the biggest takeaway you'd like them to remember?
First, thank you for saying Mackey's career. It's went fast, but thank you for the kind words. My advice would be to any person I bring in we bring in as a new tech agent, whatever. First of all, I hate the term subject matter expert. Okay. I think you can know more. And I know the definition of subject matter experts, more than the next guy, whatever the case is. But I meet a lot of experts every day, but I've yet to meet one, if that makes sense. In the technology world and counter-UAS world, I think you're going to constantly be evolving and learning. And that's the key. Grab the technology by the horns, learn the base foundational piece of what a drone is, how it flies, what a command and control looks like, how it works. And then you'll better understand how to defeat that. Because when you know your threat, you can defeat it better when you actually understand and know your threat. Understand the technology, signal propagation, how does mitigation work? What are the different types of mitigation out there that are more fairly and equitable for your environment? So what a correctional facility needs and a chemical plant needs or an city needs could be totally different, but there's plenty of solutions out there that will effectively deal with all of them. But the biggest thing is education, 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 not just for yourself. Jason Day in Texas is doing it. Robert Dooley in Florida is doing it now with Fort Highway Patrol. We're realizing that biggest foundational piece to counter-UAS is actually the education piece. If you solve the education piece and deal with, I know people are kind of moving away from the careless and clueless term, but if you can deal with that 95% of the careless and clueless you have to deal with daily, then your problem becomes smaller that you're dealing with. So now you've narrowed that haystack, as our friend the FAA says, and you're introspectively dealing with your particular issue. But education of the public, education of your people, but most importantly, education of yourself. If you're coming into this line of work, read, learn, talk to people, network, go to the conferences, talk. I started out by going to conferences back in 2015 in Northern Virginia, and then got more educated on this technology and the actual approach to it, and watched it now evolve from this layered approach to where we're at today, moving forward in 2025. I had some very, very, very good people at the FAA and DHS, Brent Cotton, Steve Willoughby, all these, Mike Beliles, Mary Rupert, all these people that took the time to talk to me and helped me better understand the federal perspective. I was able to give them the SLTT perspective. And then we all realized that we're all rowing this canoe in the same direction. We just have different focal points. We just got to kind of keep rowing in that same direction together. And we're going to hopefully get there sooner rather than later.
Well said. And as we mentioned before, and such a theme in this podcast is community of this entire network of all of us in different focal points, but all in the canoe riding the same direction, all kind of coming together and having these conversations and learning from each other and such. Groups like Drone Responders, and say our that DroneSense, our Friday working groups, it's just trying to bring everyone together, because we're all going downstream. Well, we're all going down a stream. I don't know if it's up or down, but we're going down a stream.
We're getting there. We're all efforting. And one thing I can say about this whole group is everybody in the U.S., the UAS technology area, whether it's industry, whether it's operators, end users, whatever, it is a great group of people to be around. They're all willing to help each other, and that's been a great benefit for all of us.
Awesome. Well, hey, DJ, thank you so much for your time today and sharing your wealth of knowledge and subject matter expert, but in the right way.
Yes.
And everyone, thank you so much for tuning in to Dronecast. We're looking forward to having you next time. Take care. And that's a wrap for today's episode of Dronecast, rethinking public safety one drone at a time. I hope you found today's conversation insightful and thought-provoking. As always, we want to hear from you. What do you think of today's topics? Do you have any questions or suggestions for future episodes? Don't forget, you can reach out to us on LinkedIn at Dronecast, rethinking public safety one drone at a time, or head over to dronesense.com/Dronecast to share your thoughts and get more content from the show. If you enjoyed this episode, please consider subscribing, rating, and sharing it with others who are passionate about the future of drones and public safety. Thanks for listening, and we'll catch you next time.